Hey friends, got 13 Wii Shoot Em Ups for you. Ready? Let's go. Really quickly, before we get into the games, the ESRB rating is going to be up in this corner over here. And some of them actually use motion control, some of them use motion control in the nunchuck. I'm going to explain to you which ones need what so you can play. I would highly recommend getting a Wii Motion Plus, as that helps a lot with some of these games that use the motion control. Other than that, we're going to start with Data East Arcade Collection. Thankfully, with the Data East game, you only need the Wiimote, no nunchuck here, and there's no motion control. The first one we're going to talk about is called Heavy Barrel. It reminds me a lot of Ikari Warriors, like almost identical. Your character can move in 8 directions, and you can shoot in any of those directions as well. So getting guys lined up that are also shooting at you can be quite a task. The game doesn't move you in just single direction. At times when you're progressing through the level, you may end up traveling in a U-shaped pattern or an upright up pattern. They're all a little bit different. As you're walking through, you can pick up weapon and grenade upgrades, which do help out quite a bit, dealing out more damage, and can change up the gameplay quite a bit, making it very easy if you pick up the right ones. It's definitely a fun game. It's very much a throwback. Yeah, it's a good time. Next game on the Data East collection we're going to talk about is called Secret Agent. And it's not just a straight shoot 'em up, there's run and gun sections too, so it's quite interesting. It's unique in terms of play as far as a shooter. It's very simple in the play mechanics. You're really not moving around a lot. It's different than most as you're playing through. Not saying that negatively, just different. The graphics definitely have a retro flair, and the difficulty would definitely be pulling quarters right out of your pocket if you were playing this in the arcade. It's an interesting game and a nice addition to the Data East collection. The next game we're going to talk about on the Data East collection is called Super Real Darwin. Firstly, this game is hard, like unjustly hard, but the premise is cool at the same time. As you're piloting your ship, when you kill specific enemies, they will drop this little floating E thing, which I guess stands for evolution. When you collect it, your ship will evolve, getting larger and doing more damage, one of which is handy and the other one not so much. If you take damage and your ship has evolved, you return to the weak little level 1 ship. If you take damage and you're in that form, you're just dead. There's also 2 levels, flying enemies as well as ground enemies, but there's many more flyers to worry about. Truly, it's a hard game and another quarter sucker if you came across it in an actual arcade. Overall, the game has 15 different games on it. I'm not going to go into the other ones because this is all about shoot 'em ups. But there's plenty on here to go through if you like the Data East catalog. Next game we're going to talk about is called Blastworks, and this is a very unique game. For Blastworks, you do need the nunchuck to play the game. There was an online component as well, however, it doesn't want to play nice anymore, so no new content for us. The nice thing about this is you can play up to 4 people on this game, which is great if you've got some friends over to play along. I think the game is more meant for younger audiences, as the gameplay isn't very technical at all. The gimmick here is basically when you shoot something off of an enemy, you can actually attach it to your own ship just by flying into it. And if it's pointed the right way, it'll shoot in the proper direction. If it's not, it'll just shoot in whichever direction it's pointing. But it does give you more of a shield to burn through, so it's not a one-shot kill. As you move down, your shots will pitch down, and vice versa when you're moving up on the screen, too. You can hold down the Z button, which will make all the other craft you've collected disappear, and lock you in at the shooting angle, which does help. There isn't any gameplay motion controls on this one, thankfully. You do have to navigate the menus using it, however. The 2 modes are campaign and arcade. Both of them are alright, but there's really no difference between either of them. It's an okay game, but I definitely think it was targeted at a younger audience. Next game we're going to talk about is called Sin and Punishment, which is an on-rails shooting game, and very fun. You do need the nunchuck for this game as well, and you move with your thumbstick and you dodge with the Z button. You have 3 difficulties to select from when you first start up the game as well. On the controller side, holding down the B button is your auto fire, and your motion control is with the aim, but it's actually pretty good with this game. You do also have a close range attack, so instead of holding down the B button, you can just tap it. but you don't really need that except for specific bosses. The aim control works well, but I definitely recommend using a Wii Motion Plus controller, as I think that helps out quite a bit. The graphics are good, but I can't seem to help but think that the main characters look like gelflings from the Dark Crystal for some reason. A very interesting aspect of the game is that when you quit out or die, you're going to start back at the same checkpoint that you left. Now I know that sounds pretty obvious, however when I jumped right back into the game, I was right at the boss that killed me. It was really nice as I expected to have to chug my way back through the entire level again. The soundtrack does have a rockin' theme to it, which helps move the game along. Also, regarding the gameplay, there is a ton to shoot at, so your index finger will be locked into the auto-fire position for the majority of the game. Overall, it's a great game and a great shooter. I definitely recommend picking this one up. Now we're going to talk about a game called Geometry Wars Galaxies. And if you like vector graphics, this game is going to be for you. You will need the nunchuck for this game as well. There's a few different modes for this game as well. Firstly, there's a multiplayer mode that lets you play with or against your friends locally. There is also a retro evolved mode. It just seems to be the normal straight up game with 3 lives and you're done. Nothing fancy. The Galaxy mode is the primary gameplay here. There's 10 different systems in a spiral. Regrettably, for one of them, it requires having a DS to unlock, and I don't have one. Each system has a specific cost to unlock in terms of geomes, and then inside each system, you have to actually unlock the planets with geomes as well. You also get a drone in this mode, and you can have it set up in a couple of different ways. Either a sniper, a turret, a collector, defense, whatever. As you use a specific mode on the drone more and through the levels, it will upgrade. Also, when you unlock a skill for the drone, it carries it through the rest of the game as well. The background music is there, but I really didn't notice it. Like, it's not heavy or anything, it just kind of fades into the background playing the game. You hear a lot more of the sound effects and explosions as the game goes on. The controls are really simple. Movement is a nunchuck thumbstick, B is to fire, and Z is your bomb if you get into trouble and you need to clear the board. It's a fun twin-stick shoot 'em up, and if you like the previous ones, I highly recommend this one as well, because it's going to be on the cheap. And there's a lot to undo with unlocking and upgrading your drone. Definitely give it a thumbs up. Next game we're going to talk about is called Veggy World. And right off the bat, this game was not targeted at my demographic whatsoever. Veggy World is very much a shoot 'em up that has a slower pace to it. It does use the nunchuck for movement, however you don't have to. You can use the D-pad on the controller, however attempting to do that while also trying to aim with the controller would get very tiresome very quickly. The background music is very sing-songy and repetitive as well. It's not bad, it's just meant for a much younger audience. There is no difficulty setting here that I can see, so you're not really going to be able to dial it up or down. Though, as you play, you earn money that allows you to purchase different upgrades, such as more powerful shots, shooting faster, lasers, moving faster, shields, and a few other things. There are 2 modes of play here, your regular missions and a survival mode. It does have a multiplayer option as well, so you can play with a friend. I can see this being a game that would be ideal when you're playing with a small child, as far as like an older sibling or parent. One other thing to note here, there doesn't seem to be any way to replay previous levels, so there's no way to grind cash to get it overpowered or anything. As for the survival mode, it's based solely on time. There's no cash or anything that you get out of it, and your name just goes up on the leaderboard if you beat somebody else's time. Veggy World is a cute and fun game, but it's not my favorite, unless the grandkids are coming over. Now we're going to talk about a game called Centipede Infestation. Like so many other games here, you're going to need the nunchuck for the analog stick as far as movement goes. The regular controller is your reticle for shooting with the motion control. Now, the one thing that makes this game different is that not only do you have to shoot in the right direction, the target needs to be on what you want to actually kill. There are 3 difficulty levels to choose from here, normal, hard, and insane. Insane difficulty gets unlocked via code under the extras area. I'll cover that later in the same segment. As far as multiplayer goes, it looks like you can actually have somebody jump in or out of your game, and you don't have to start a 2-player specific game right at the start. They can hop in and out of your save. It's pretty cool. The gameplay is very similar to Smash TV, in the fact that it keeps you in a small area and bugs keep coming at you. Then, at a certain point, the centipede comes out to play. As you're playing through the different levels, you're going to unlock different songs and extras for the game. The gameplay is fun, but the story is very schmaltzy. Boy finds girl thinks him by questioning his survival choices of killing bugs, even though the next level you have to keep her alive from the attacking bugs. she's some super gardener. It's all sorts of very special episode of Feel Good. There's some extras that can be gone through, such as the theater, which retells the story, jukebox, where you can replay music, gallery of concept art, and the code entry. I've included a link to some codes I found online, and they unlock different things, such as the insane level difficulty, as well as costumes for the character. It's a fun twin-stick shooter that I would recommend getting if it's in your budget. It's by no means a AAA game, but it's fun. Next game we're going to talk about is called Alien Syndrome, and this one's interesting. Alien Syndrome can be played with up to 4 people and presents 3 difficulty options before you start up the game. This game does require the nunchuck to play, and it actually does some interesting things with it. You can rotate your field of view by rotating your wrist left or right with the right controller. Off the bat, all the controls sound great, but it just doesn't work really well for me. Between trying to figure out the mini games and trying to conserve ammo with bad guys that won't kill me in just a few hits and trying to gear up, it seems like the motion controls were kind of an afterthought. The game's premise is great. It can almost be a space version of Diablo with different equipment and such, but when you have a ranged weapon equipped, the left controller is used to aim. However, when you have a melee weapon equipped, it's just whichever way you're facing is the way you're going to attack. It's not a big deal, but learning the menus and how to switch weapons isn't exactly straightforward. The mini games are okay, it's just you gotta remember to flick and pound or flick and shoot and pound, and it's just, yeah, maybe I didn't give the game enough time, but just wasn't a fan of the controls on this thing. Next game we're going to talk about is called Monkey King. And Monkey King is one of the few games that you actually don't need a nunchuck for. And the only motion control you have is if you tilt the controller left, the screen's going to tilt that way and you'll move slower. And if you tilt it right, it's going to fly faster. It's a pretty cool concept. I never really much played into that, but it's there. Under the settings, you can select the number of lives, as well as setting the difficulty with 1 of 3 options. As for multiplayer, you do have a 2-player co-op mode, but besides that, it's just story mode and you're on your own. I dug into the story mode, and the premise is that you're fighting back monsters that are causing problems in different villages. Nothing too out of the ordinary. It's a cute story that the younger audiences will enjoy, I think. It is a fun little cute 'em up, but there's not a lot of depth here. There is some upgrading as far as your weapons and fly speed go. It's cool, it's different, definitely I think meant more for younger audiences as well. Now we're going to talk about a game called Namco Museum Remix. My only gripe about this game is that in the hub area where you have to navigate going to the different games, that's the only spot where you have to use the nunchuck. Playing the games, it's actually optional. Did Nintendo just force developers to create games that use a nunchuck for the sake of required hardware? On this collection, you're actually going to get Galaxian, Gaplus, and Xevious. All 3 of which are great classic shoot 'em ups. And I'm showing some footage here. Really quickly about this game, don't buy this game. Don't buy this. Okay? Here's why. Buy this. Because this has many more games on it and a few more shmups. And we're going to cover them now. So, don't buy this. Buy this. With the Namco Museum Megamix, you will get 2 more shmups. You actually get 10 more games, but 2 of them are shmups for this video. The first one is called King of Balloons. King of Balloons is interesting. It's almost like a combination of Defender and Galaxian. So with King of Balloons, you're trying to shoot the balloons, and the balloons are trying to whisk away your king. And you have to kill them if they pick your king up. If not, you lose your king. Pretty simple premise. The other game in the collection is called Bosconian. You're flying around in space, and you have to destroy different space stations by destroying all the round sections. But the space stations have defenses, as well as they're deploying other flyers to take you out as well. So it's definitely a unique shoot 'em up that I haven't played before. I actually really like this, and if they did a newer version of this, I think that would be really cool. Another game we're going to cover is called SNK Arcade Classics Volume 1. And there's actually 2 shoot 'em ups on this one that we're going to go over quickly. First one is called Shock Troopers. And starting off, you get to select your team and then 1 of 8 different characters. If you pick the lone wolf, you only have 1 life. If you pick the team, you'll actually be able to go through 3 different characters. So that might impact your selection. Their only difference is their special move and their looks, but it is something that makes them more unique. Some characters' special moves are grenades, which is par for the course, but there's one character that actually uses a boomerang, which is very unique. After that, you also select the game route, which is interesting. Selecting one of 3 routes definitely adds to the uniqueness of the run, but also adds to the replayability of the game as well. The background music is alright. It's very similar to Metal Slug in terms of cadence and tone. It's definitely a fun shoot 'em up, and yes, I consider this a shoot 'em up. Maybe a twin stick shooter, perhaps? Either way, it's a good time. The next game we're going to talk about is Last Resort. It's a well-done shmup. They don't short you on lives here either playing the game, which is good because it's a one-hit kill. The enemies are nicely varied, and with their style and how they come at you and shoot at you as well. There are some very tight spots that you have to finesse your way through as you're going through some of the levels though. The graphics look great, with many different layers in the game. It's not quite parallax, but with the rain and the other details, it looks wonderful. It's by no means an easy game, and there is no setting to change the difficulty here either. But it is a very fun time if you have the patience to die in the same spot a few times until you learn how to get past it. Next on the list is another compilation game called the Ultimate Shooting Collection. On this game you're getting 3 different shoot 'em ups, Radio Alergy or Radigy, Karous, and Chaos Field. You're also going to need the nunchuck for this game, so make sure that's in your controller bin as well. We're going to start with Radio Alergy. Under options, you have 3 different settings as far as difficulty go, as well as a battery setting, which is your shields. When you start the game, you'll be able to select one of 3 different shots. Your options are wide, lasers, or a bubble shot. The music here goes along very well with the game and helps to create a smooth flow as you're playing. The game's art style is cell shading and it's beautifully done. The game's pacing flows along very well and it isn't overly stressful at all. It's a fun game that I've wanted to play for a while, but I didn't know was available locally until I found it on this collection. Next game in the collection that we're going to talk about is called Chaos Field. Regarding settings for Chaos Field, you've got 3 different options as far as difficulty, as well as the shields options that you can dial up or down to make the game easier or harder. You start off by selecting one of 3 pilots in their respective ship. The game seems like a boss rush mode game. There's not really a lot of little guys flying all over the place. It's just you versus a very large bad guy. It's fun, but it's not easy. I was on easy mode and I still made it to the 2nd level, but I blew through all 3 of my continues. The graphics are dark, but they're beautifully detailed. The sound effects are on point, and the background music really helps to move the gameplay along as well. The last game in the collection is called Karous. Karous? And just like the other 2, had 3 different difficulty options and a life meter you can dial down to 30 or up to 60 for some reason. Even after you've set that, when you start the game, you're presented with an easy, normal, or hard option as well. This is almost like a secondary difficulty, so you can go from easy to hard. There's not a lot of color going on in the playfield here, but it does allow you to very clearly see your shots. The cell shading art style is the same as Radio Alergy. One aspect that I noticed is that a lot of the game's backgrounds fly by very quickly, but not in this one. It gives you a little bit of time to appreciate it. If you enjoy a good shoot 'em up, I definitely recommend getting this game, even if it's just for Radio Alergy, because I've only ever seen that game on its own as an import, and that comes at a premium price as well as modding your system. So, highly recommend this game. Next up is a game called Castle of Shikigami 3, and you're going to need your nunchuck for this one as well. As for options, you've got 5 different difficulty levels to choose from, as well as the different game modes. You can select arcade version or director's mode. One feature here that stands out from the others is the option of Tate mode. So if you have that option, I highly recommend it, as you have a bigger playfield. As for the gallery section, you can listen to different selections of the background music, view art from the game, as well as go through the storyline. There is a multiplayer option for this game as well, which is the nice addition. As for alternate gameplay modes, there is a boss rush and a practice mode if those pique your interest. Once you do fire up the game, you're actually presented with a second set of difficulty options. You have easy, normal, and then 3 different options for extreme. Selecting your character, you have 10 different options to choose from, each having their own firing pattern. If you hold down the fire button, your shots are actually going to shift and you're going to fly a little bit slower. However, if you mash on the fire button, you'll have the ability to move at full speed as well. The storytelling and art direction of the characters definitely have an anime style to them. However, the gameplay is all in 3D rendered graphics and it looks great. Overall, it's a very fun shoot 'em up and definitely should have in your collection. Next game we're going to talk about is called Ocean Commander. And right off the bat here, this game looks very similar to another game. Like, very similar. Like, identical. I think it's just a reskinning of Veggy World. Or Veggy World is a reskinning of this. Like Veggy World, you don't need the nunchuck to play this game either. The music in this one is a lot better than in Veggy World. It's got a bit more rock flair to it, and it doesn't grate on the nerves quite so much. And yeah, the games are identical. Options, upgrades, everything except the map, because they made the map bigger. So Ocean Commander is basically identical to Veggy World. There you go. If you played one, you played the other one. Last game on the list we're going to talk about is called Saint. And looking at the intro artwork on this game is going to be great. No, it's not. For options, you have 3 choices for difficulty, as well as setting the number of lives from 1 to 9. There is a 2-player option here as well. The game reminds me of Monkey King, except the anime style artwork in between the levels, and the levels are actually quite a bit longer than the other game. When you're playing through the stages, your perspective is actually going to change, going from flying left to right to more of a Space Harrier type of setup, and those weapons that you may have collected don't do you any good here. You still have them when you get out of this mode, but you just can't use them here. There's 0 depth to this game. The enemies, as well as the main character, have basically 2 positions. One when they're not doing anything, and one when they're actually shooting something at you. The graphics are just very plain, and something I would expect more on a PS1 or even a Super Nintendo in terms of graphics and gameplay. I was so let down when I fired this thing up. I had such high hopes for this game. It's not unplayable, it's just meh. I put it on here so you can see the gameplay and you can inform your own opinion. I just couldn't get into this. The gameplay, the controls work very well. It's just, there's no depth, there's nothing to pull me in. There you go, friends. 13 shmups for the Wii, 14 if you count the 2 Namco museums, but 13 legit ones. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead and leave them below. Be good to each other. Have a good day. Thanks for watching. Blah, 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 blah.